So hey students, this is the second video out of how to create graphs. We are working on the formatting and customization of graphs, and you should have a document that's open that has several graphs looking like this. What we're going to do is we are going to select the graph that is in your working space, and we're going to double click on the line graph tool because we would like to format and customize graphs. Double clicking on the line graph tool, whatever graph you're in, just double click on that graph tool and your graph type will pop up. Okay, in the graph type dialog box, you can click the button that corresponds to the desired graph type. We have the line selected. Maybe you want to change it to the stack column and say okay, and it does change it indeed. And once graph objects are painted with gradients, changing graph types can cause unexpected results. So if we're going to customize, double click and you take a look, you tell it certain things here, and then you go on under here and you can, add a drop shadow, say okay, got this little drop shadow. You just want to be careful with the kind of colors that we're going to apply to it as well. And you can see this drop shadow, sort of an issue. A little too dark in my opinion. See, okay, we'll go back to normal. All right. So, we don't want to apply a gradient quite yet. We can do that later simply by, adding a fill of a gradient. So it does turn into the picker once you're changing the colors of the graph. Okay. And also do it that way if you want, and then change the gradient among all of the bars as opposed to having the gradient. If I do a Command Z to undo, you can see the gradient goes in each one of the bars. I just changed the gradient down here for the fill. But if you wanted to go across all of the bars, you can certainly do so that way, which is also interesting. That's customizing your bar graph color just a little bit. Close that out a little. All right, next we're going to format a graph's axis. So select the graph with the selection tool. Now we're going to double click to open up the graph type. We're going to change the position of the value axis. Select an option from the value axis menu. Go here. And then we select an option, tick marks. We can do full width tick marks just to change it up just a little bit. We can do draw 2 tick marks per division, say okay, and you can see the differences that applied. Now I'm going to assign different scales to the value axis, and one way to do that is to select the group selection tool. Well, first you want to have your graph selected, then select the group selection tool. You can select one and then select all, and then that's a second, just one click, and then click again, and then go ahead and click the legend for the data. Choose object graph type. Object graph type pops up, and then you can from the value axis pop-up menu, you can select the axis to which you want to assign the data. So you might want, full width, maybe you want short, 2 tick marks, maybe you can do 2 divisions, and then say okay. You can see sort of the changes that occur in that way as well. And then to move on to formatting columns, bars, and lines, you would then select your graph, choose Object, Graph Type, or double click your graph tool over here. And then you would adjust the space of the column width. You could do that. We could do 500. And then, you know, for example, you can also, for the other types, these start to overlap as they get bigger. So I'm going to undo that. You know, if I go to double clicking it again, and if I did, instead of 500, I think I did 200. You can see they still kind of overlap each other. So that's, you just want to keep that in mind when you're adjusting things. And then the next thing you want to know is you can adjust lines and data points in line, scatter, and radar graphs as well. You can adjust the sizes. To change how columns, bars, and lines overlap, you can set the first row in front and first column in front options. Like this. I want to do 100, 150. Let's see what that. So you can see that we still see that the first one is overlapping. I'm going to do 100. Okay, and then always select first column in front for area graphs. If you don't, some areas may not appear, just so you know when you're working with area graphs as well. Okay, so the general graph options, there's different things that you can do. For example, you can, if you select your graph and double click, bring up your graph type, you can add a drop shadow. You can add a legend across the top and say, okay, let's see, add legend across the top. Because we haven't indicated that in our graph data area, we do not have the legend up top, but you can add it and it will show, instead of to the right, it will go to the top. You can see it's sort of gone to the right in some of these other graphs that we've created over here. So if you want it on top, you can change that. And you can add a drop shadow as well. You want to be careful with the drop shadow. You want to make sure that it's not all black. So if I add a drop shadow here, if I say okay, you can see I have this black shadow, which works fine in this particular one. But for example, if my bars were all graph black and not a gradient, that would be an issue. Okay, you can also format pie graphs. Formatting pie graphs are over here. So if we move this chart out of the way, move our pie chart back in, select the graph with the selection tool, and you can choose Object, Graph Type, Object, Graph Type, or double click on your graph tool again. And then you can change the placement of the legend, select an option for the legend. Do add legend across top. So your options for the legend, you can do legend in wedges, you can do a standard legend. I like the standard legend. You can sort all, first, none, position, ratio, even or stacked, however you want that to look. And then if we say okay, you can see how that has changed just a little bit. It looks a little strange with the A, B, C, D perfectly spaced out, but it does indeed change the formatting to your liking, depending on what you're creating. Okay, let's move that one back over here. And then next, we can bring the bar, let's go ahead and bring this bar graph one back out. You can combine different graph types in one graph. And how you do that, you would select the group selection tool and then click the legend for the data, which graph you want to change. Go ahead and click again, and that selects that selects, you know, those specific colors that align with A in the legend. And then without moving the selection, well, we already did that selection pointer, you click again, and then that selects the columns. So next you want to choose object graph type, object graph type. We've got our type open, and you can double click that as well on the graph in your panel, in your tools panel, and select the graph type and options you want. Okay, so we can, you know, add a drop shadow, first row in front, legend across the top, all of that kind of stuff, and then say okay. I like the way that I had mine before. And then we select parts of a graph. You can deselect, go back to the group selection. I'm going to select B this time. I select twice. And then without moving the group selection, click again to deselect. You can change. So let's say you wanted to change these colors. You certainly could. Let's say it was a bluish color. Say okay. There we go. Not going to let us do it from the color picker, apparently. So we can do it from there. And then if you wanted to change this one as well to a green, we would just have to go to the group selection tool. Select, go to the green. There we go. A couple different options. And then formatting the text in a graph, you select the group selection tool again, and then you click once to select the baseline of the type you want to change. And then I'm going to zoom in just a little, and then click twice to select all of the type. You can see it's selected all the type right here, the 1990 and the 2000. And then change the attributes as desired. For example, I can change this to any character that I wish. I can make it a little larger, a little smaller, change it from Myriad Pro to stencil. We go to the group. And if I go up to my character panel and I go down to stencil, got some changes there. You can choose whatever format as you're working along with me, but just so you understand how to do it. So click with the group selection tool, click, and then you can double click right in there and it brings you your cursor in and it brings you to the type tool if you didn't already know that. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to add pictures and symbols to graphs in the next video.